Hello, welcome to the second episode of The Secret Basement. So, in my previous episode, I gave a short glimpse into my comic book collection and a short introduction into my story as a collector. But for this episode, I wanted to give you a brief history and introduction into how I got into comic books and collecting in the first place. Essentially, my story of how I got into the world of comic books and graphic novels and all that. Um, this episode may also kind of act as a recommendation list for some of you if you're thinking about getting into comic books and graphic novels. You want to find something good to read. This may help you in a way. Um, but yeah, so without further ado, these are the three comic books that got me into collecting and buying comic books and pretty much my 10-year obsession with pretty much everything comics. So, here we go. So, my first one, which was my first and primary introduction to comic books, wasn't a comic but a graphic novel. Um, so most of you know what this is. It's Watchmen. It's one of the most popular and famous comic books ever written. It's by Alan Moore, who's like a legendary writer in the world of comics. He wrote V for Vendetta, From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and The Killing Joke, and so much more. But yeah, this was my very first real comic book slash graphic novel that I read, that I bought myself when I was a teenager, and kind of opened the door for me. But yeah, so as I said before, it's written by Alan Moore. The original story, the original run of the 12 comic book series came out in 1986, and I think I got this in like 2006. Actually, I know I got it a couple of years before the movie came out, but I actually bought this at a Borders too. The sticker's still on there. This was even before I even entered a comic book store. But yeah, the stickers right there. I paid $20 for this back then. But yeah, there's Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, who was the illustrator and the colorist. But yeah, this is if I don't recommend this for kids because it's a really mature story, but it is an amazing read. I don't know why I got it in the first place. Maybe it was because the cover. Maybe it said it was one of Times Magazine's 100 best novels, even though it's a comic book slash graphic novel. But yeah, as soon as I read it, I was just mind blown by the story. If you don't know what it's about, it's essentially about. It's kind of like a retelling history. It kind of asks the question, what if superheroes were real and how would they affect our world and history? Um, so essentially, how this starts is I'll give you a short look into the comic book. But yeah, this is one of the most iconic openings in all of comic book history. I mean, you see a comedian's pen laying on the street covered in blood, and you get the image of the crime scene and all that, and it's really has a noir kind of feel to it. And you're introduced into some of the characters, like the comedian, who was one of the he's kind of like the plot of the story. Like, it's kind of like a who done it in a way, a mystery. It's a murder mystery. that involve superheroes and politics and all that. Because of course, if it's Alan Moore, it has to have politics in it. But yeah, you're introduced to Rorschach early on, who is one of the most iconic. Man, it's like a iconic a vigilante in a way. He has the Rorschach mask. Oh, and bit of trivia is originally before this was made, Alan Moore wanted to use the characters from the DC universe, more specifically in the Justice League, but DC wouldn't allow it, so they pretty much convinced him to use characters from in the Charleston comic um, line of characters. So most of these are they're not original, but they're not DC. They're characters from a different comic book company that DC bought back in the 80s. But yeah, when I first read this comic book, it just blew my mind away. I think I read it in like 2 days. I mean, I just couldn't put it down. I mean, but as I said before, it's more of a mature comic book. It's not. There are a lot of controversial and mature things in there. It has to deal with like drug use, violence. There's some scenes of a sexual assault. There's So if you're triggered by some stuff like that, maybe look into it more before you read it, or watch the movie. Because in my opinion, the movie is a fantastic adaptation of this book. It's, in my opinion, it's one of the best comic book adaptations into movie ever made. And I prefer the ending in the movie compared to the original source. But yeah, that's just me though. But it's this story. I think I read this. And the last time I read it was about, I'm gonna say 2 years ago. But yeah. Yeah, I should read it again. It's been a long time. But I think in total I read this about 5 times in the span of like 10 years. But yeah. So, yep. This is the first one that got me introduced into comic books in the first place. So, move on to the next one. So, after I got done reading Watchmen, I wanted something. I knew I wanted to read something else because Watchmen left such a deep impact on me. I was just drawn to the world of comics and graphic novels, so I wanted to like dwell more into it. So I looked for something else, and I don't know where I think I got this at Borders too, actually, because I didn't. This was before I even went to a comic book store. But so anyway, I read The Sandman after Watchmen. But yeah, this so in a way, the best way to explain it is Watchmen introduced me into the world of comic books, but Sandman it solidified my deep obsession and love for comic books and the stories that were inside them. I mean, Sandman, I said this before, but it is my favorite comic book series of all time. It's even as a kid, even to this day, it's still the stories in it just mesmerize me. I mean, Neil Gaiman, in my opinion, is one of the greatest writers of all time. Not just for comics, but for also novels as well. He wrote American Gods and Coraline, as it says on there. But he, in my, I can best compare. I can best compare him to, say, if he's like a modern day Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, he focuses on a lot of like dark fantasy, gothic horror kind of stories. But so anyways, this is another one that was originally published by DC, but later on in their in the run, it got changed into Vertigo, which is owned by DC. But this is Vertigo is known for it's more known for producing more immature comics, which this itself is also a mature comic like like Watchmen was. But so anyways, so the Sandman is the story is about the Sandman, the Lord of Dreams, um, the in the mythological figure who kind of like is in control of each of our dreams. He's also kind of based on an old DC character, but that's completely different. Um, it kind of ties into this as well, but loosely. But so, anyways, the story pretty much takes place um, when the Sandman. His name is Morpheus. He has a bunch of names in that story, but he's pretty much either called Morpheus or Orfeo or something like that. But so, anyways, in this one, we're introduced to him when he's trapped and summoned and imprisoned by an occult leader who mistook him for death because he was trying to find in the secret to immortality. But he captured Dream instead. And so, anyways, the first chapter is he's pretty much a prisoner. He's kept a prisoner for decades, and the first chapter just goes through time as he's run away as a prisoner. A lot of his items are stolen, which kind of is a plot for the whole story. But like he had a mask and a scepter and some diamond necklace, and they were all stolen from him. But yeah. So anyways, he I forgot how, but he escapes. This is when his captor is like really old, and so pretty much he escapes, and he's unleashed into the world again. He returns to his domain in the realm of dreams. But so pretty much the whole story of this is he has to escape. He has to reclaim all his stolen artifacts. Yeah, I'll give you a short glimpse into all this. Yeah, the artwork in this, I want to say the artwork is also part of what got me into it. The story is most of it, but the artwork is so it's illustrated by Sam Keefe and Malcolm Jones. I think Malcolm Jones did the cover for these, or maybe no, it was Dave McKean, wasn't it? Yeah, Dave McKean did the covers, and yeah, Sam Keefe and Malcolm Jones and Mike. I can't pronounce the name, but yeah, they were the illustrators. And, yeah, this I read this so much too. I mean, I just love because I was kind of emo back then when I was a teenager, and I'm always been into like gothic and horror stuff. But yeah, this just caught my imagination right away. Yeah, and it's so dark. It's so mysterious and eerie sometimes, but in a cool way. Yeah, and the cool thing about this one is it takes place in the DC universe. So there are cameos. You see cameos from like a bunch of familiar superheroes, like and Martian Manhunter's in here. So it's a Scarecrow from Batman. Yeah, I think Batman makes a cameo in this too, actually. I'm not sure. Oh, and the biggest cameo of all is Constantine. But yeah, he has a really cool chapter in this. Let me see. Yeah, so this is pretty much. Oh, here's the Constantine chapter. Yeah, he's cool. Yeah, this is if you're really into like dark fantasy, um, oh man, like I remember the Hell chapter. Oh man, this was such a great chapter. Yeah, it's really uh, yeah. I remember this was also contained one of like the most violent and glorious chapters. Um, like some people know it as like one of the most like violent and bloody chapters ever illustrated and written about in comic books. I don't think it's that bad compared to a lot of stuff, but yeah, it's really good. Yeah, um this comic book. I got every graphic novel in this. I have every issue. Um, I don't have every original issue, but I have a lot of them. But I know I pretty much have every story from beginning to the most recent one, which is Sandman Overture, which came out in 2015. That was actually when I stopped collecting comic books, so I think that was kind of like symbolized my ending too, from start to finish. But, yeah. So, whereas Watchmen introduced me to comics, and The Sandman is solidified my love and obsession with comics, and The Secret Invasion introduced me into the world of Marvel. Now, Marvel was like my go-to comic book publisher for like my entire time of collecting. While I like DC, Marvel was always my favorite, and this series really introduced me to that world. Like I knew of Spider-Man before and X-Men through like the movies, but I never like you know I didn't know that much about them. So when and I think this was one of the first ones that I got from the first time I went into a comic book store. Um, Cause it looked cool. The cover looked cool. I was like, Secret Invasion. What's this about? So I read it and it was like, whoa! Like I remember at the time, um, I was showing my friend this too, cause he was into comic books a little bit, but not so much as me. But even he was like mind blown by it. I mean, this is like one of the best, in my opinion, the best Marvel story arc that was written. But then again, that's just my opinion. But I like this one a lot. Um, yeah. So if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers mixed into the Marvel universe in a way. It takes place after in the Civil War. But from what I know, from what I've known and what I heard, is that pretty much this was like years in the making. This was like even before the Civil War came out, and they were like planning this thing. So pretty much what it's about a Skrull invasion, pretty much, but a secret invasion, as the title says. But so, anyways, so for years, unbeknownst to all the heroes in the Marvel universe, they a lot of the original heroes were being kidnapped or abducted by Skrulls, which were if any of you have seen like the Avengers movies or like Guardians of the Galaxies, they're pretty much like the bad guys of the universe of like outer space. Um, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Thanos is a Skrull as well. I'm not sure, but I should know that. But I wasn't into. I don't think I read that much about Thanos actually. I don't think, but yeah. So, anyways, so pretty much like I said, um, pretty much for throughout the Civil War, from during the Civil War and after, unbeknownst to everyone, superheroes were being abducted behind everyone's back and replaced with the Skrull who could shapeshift, shapeshift into the hero that they abducted and kidnapped. But and I think sometimes they killed them, and like they were killed off from the Marvel Universe for good, and some came back. But so, anyways, yeah, this shows like the first time, because I didn't know about this, I knew who the characters were, but then I was like, I read it, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? So yeah, um, yeah, Captain Iron Man finds out that Elektra was a Skrull all along, and pretty much like this is has to do with mostly with the Avengers, because if you're not familiar with how the story arcs work in the Marvel Universe, there's a primary story, but then this story arc kind of um, goes off into every other character's story arc. Like there was a Secret Invasion Spider-Man, a Secret Invasion X-Men, Secret Invasion Daredevil, um, Iron Man, all that. So yeah, so it pretty much like encompasses the entire Marvel universe. But yeah, I remember reading this the first time it came out, and I could not stop reading it, and I think it was an 8-issue long story arc. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna try not to spoil it too much, the ending. But the last few pages in this, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there's like yeah, the page after this is like, wow, you're just like left mind blown. I remember my mouth being wide open. I couldn't like believe it, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like this is what got me into collecting. What got me into the world of comics in the first place. And after this, I got into Spider-Man and all that. So yeah, those were my 3 primary introductions into comic books and collecting comic books that would last on for nearly a decade. And yeah, so these all as my recommendation if you want to get into comic books. This is also in the graphic novel form, a collection now. You can probably buy this for cheap now too, because I have the originals. But yeah, so yeah, hope you enjoy this, and like, subscribe, and all that. So, yep. Until next time, take care.